Teachers had a choice in the matter. What a concept. My name is Anthony Downer, and I'm a world history teacher at Peach Ridge High School in Gwinnett County Public Schools. As you know, Gwinnett teachers have been back in the classroom working and teaching since July. Many of our students have joined us beginning in late August. Now, in February, it appears that as more students struggle with digital learning, more students are back in the building. And as a CP teacher, I've experienced increasing class sizes and more positive cases in close contacts. Although they don't always show up at the same time, my largest class size includes almost 20 students. It's a tight squeeze to ensure social distancing. I am double masked with a face shield behind a plexiglass, not to be dramatic, not out of fear, but to protect myself and my students, as the state and district will not. I sanitize the desks between blocks and constantly remind students to pull their masks over their noses and to remain 6 feet apart. You see, educators are truly at the forefront of this pandemic. The safety of our students depends on us, but it shouldn't just be us. The GCPS Board of Education, in theory, is committed to providing a safe and secure learning environment and governing the district fairly and openly seeking the engagement of the many stakeholders it serves. And yet the individuals tasked with helping reduce the spread are excluded from decision making, dismissed from the table. Our working conditions are our students' learning conditions. If we're unsafe, burnt out, underrepresented, what kind of education do you think we can provide? We are here to uphold science and facts over politics and propaganda.
Yeah.
Although our districts are in different stages of returning to in-person learning, this coalition has united to correct the record and demand safety. In celebration of Black History Month, I am proud to represent my community, contribute to a broad vision of equity and safety, and urge more action from our government and school leaders. A partial or full return to in-person learning puts our Black students, employees, families, and communities at disproportionate risk. Let's be full and frank about the truth. Across the globe, we've witnessed disproportionately higher rates of infection and death rates and lower rates of vaccination in Black communities. According to the CDC, Black people are more likely to catch COVID-19, 3 times more likely to be hospitalized, and twice as likely to ultimately succumb to the illness than white people. Black families are aware of this risk, which explains why they are likely to choose digital learning despite the gaps in resources and outcomes. In cities like Chicago and Oakland, Black families are 1/4 to 1/3 less likely to choose in-person learning than white families. That trend is consistent across other major ethnic racial groups. Without thresholds for the spread that determine reopening plans, without optional testing and vaccinations, without consistent protocols aligned with recommendations from experts, how can we expect families to trust and choose in-person learning? For many, the risk is simply not worth it. Already, our districts have lost staff members to this vicious disease after they contracted it while working and serving in the building. Today, I recognize Ms. Maud Jones, a GCPS professional set to retire in December, who died from COVID-19 on January 4th. Let's take a moment of silence to recognize the bus drivers, custodians, teachers, administrators, and others who have died from unsafe working conditions in our districts. Their deaths were preventable, and as we honor their legacies, we also demand that must never happen again. We are here to demand that based on recommendations of the CDC and the WHO, the state and local districts ensure and enforce the following: wearing masks that effectively stop the spread, frequent hand washing and the use of hand sanitizers, social distancing in all spaces, high quality ventilation, contact tracing, and testing and vaccinations for those that want them. We must implement community pandemic task forces that set thresholds for the spread of COVID-19 and make policy recommendations. Many employees should be given the choice to work from home. We must finally face the facts about this illness and its impact and act accordingly. Now, the CDC has also reported that schools have not significantly increased the spread in their communities. Apparently, schools that reopened in the fall did not significantly increase cases. However, they did not include a representative sample of districts that serve primarily students of color or low-income students. Therefore, the true impact is yet to be seen, especially with 3 new variants. In addition, we must recognize the gap in the ability to follow these recommendations. It requires money, and if our governing bodies do not make the financial commitment, our schools won't be able to meet key standards. We're here to engage all stakeholders at all levels to do their part. We want to also speak a simple truth. If schools cannot open safely, they should not be open at all. I reject the narrative, absolutely. I reject the narrative that views GCPS as a model for reopening, especially with our cases, deaths, and current needs. No one should follow our path. As of this week, several of our districts are categorized in the red by the Department of Public Health right here in Georgia, meaning a PCR positivity rate of greater than 10%. Instead, we should uphold Clayton County as an exemplar. Earlier this month, their superintendent, Dr. Beasley, tweeted, "Why do so many demand or expect all communities and families to make the same reopening decisions while they seemingly overlook the varied and inequitable experiences, access, and resources before this pandemic that are now being highlighted and aggravated during this pandemic?" As districts contemplate a partial or full return to in-person learning, they must grapple clearly with the resources and the risk, especially to our families and communities of color. The challenge facing our schools is historically important and unique in scope. But children of the past have survived health crises and they have bounced back. It is important to note that today, 90% globally of children are enrolled in primary or public education versus 40% in 1920. In 1918, major American cities closed school buildings, as did West African schools during the Ebola epidemic of 2014. For whole school years, they relied on instruction via radio, phone, and printed materials. They did what they had to do to stop the spread, and when it was safe, they returned to the school building. Staff and administrators were trained on proper monitoring and prevention measures, including checking temperatures, requiring hand washing, and disinfecting surfaces. The continuity of education is central to the lives of our scholars, all of them, especially during a pandemic. That's why it's vital that we get this right, that we ensure safety and security first. History has shown that we can do it, and with equity and representation, we can rise to the occasion and do it again. Our students are watching what we do in this moment. We can't keep letting them down. And so I dedicate these remarks to Samara Masih, my former student who passed away in November 2019. She would have been 18 years old tomorrow and would have graduated in May. Samara was a biracial black girl, determined to be somebody. She loved life, her closest friends, her brother, and the normal teen girl stuff. She used to complain all the time that her teachers underestimated her, that some refused to recommend her for honors courses, that some critiqued her performance and behavior more often than her peers. Even though school did some damage to her spirit, she loved learning and wanted to continue her education. I fight and speak out to keep students like Samara safe. Thank you to the organizers, groups, educators, community members, and more who have made this event possible. As the co-chair of the Gwinnett Educators for Equity and Justice, I'm proud to stand in solidarity and unity with my counterparts from across the state. Thank you. Sister Asada Shakur reminds us that it is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. In that spirit, take care of yourselves and each other and keep doing what we do best. teaching and serving our communities and students, every single one. Thank you so much.